All right, good morning. Troy Calentine here, Principal Broker at KW Legacy, Keller Williams Realty in Layton, Utah. Just wanted to go over the buyer due diligence checklist. This is in conjunction with the exclusive buyer broker agreement and agency disclosure, a form that's referenced there that your buyer is going to need to have and understand, as well as you, of course, so you can explain to your buyer as you're walking through the purchase process. So let's go through it top to bottom. The buyer's due diligence checklist is provided by blank. So you're going to put the company name right here and include it in the company, including your name as the agent right here. And then number 3, you're going to put your buyer's name in here. Pretty straightforward. This part here, the notice from the company, is just basically saying the buyer's advised that the company and its agents are trained in the marketing of real estate, and that we have no we're not trained or licensed to provide the buyer with professional advice regarding the physical condition of the property or any tax or legal matters. So just make sure that as you're going through the property and you see some kind of deficiency that might be an issue, that you refer them to an inspector or appropriate professional to really address that issue, find out what the root of that problem is and what the remedy might be. If you have experience in that field, that's fine, but you always want to defer them still to a third party so that they can make a solid determination as to how they want to proceed with the property. You never want to be stuck in a situation where they rely on what you told them in an area that is not your expertise. So buyer's advice, consult with local zoning officials to ensure that the buyer's intended use of the property, including but not limited to rental and business uses, construction of new improvements, and or the remodel of existing improvements, can comply with zoning requirements. So oftentimes I get a buyer who they see a home, they love it, but they want to build an outbuilding, for instance, a big garage to use as a shop. That sounds fantastic. It could be a half-acre lot and it looks like there's plenty of space, but the local zoning and or codes may not allow it. And in addition to that, there might be restrictive covenants and conditions that don't allow it. And if they do allow it, there may be conditions as to how it needs to be built. For instance, a lot of subdivisions have something like a 200 square foot outbuilding limit, so you can only build something 10 foot by 20 foot. Well, that's not really going to be the shop that some guys want. They might want 40 by 50 or something, much more substantial. And so again, you need to make sure that your buyer understands that it's their duty to investigate what can and can't be built on the property in advance of making the purchase and during their due diligence period. If they want to rent the property, you need to consult the local zoning officials as well and review any applicable restrictive covenants. So just because the city says it's okay doesn't mean that you can necessarily. There might be a restrictive covenant in the subdivision that doesn't allow. The covenants and restrictions are separate from the city ordinances and city restrictions, so you need to make sure you review both documentations. Whichever is more strict will prevail. So if there's a covenant that only allows, for instance, up here, a 200 square foot building, but the city says you can do a 500 square foot building, you still can only do a 200 square foot building because of that restrictive covenant recorded on the property specifically. And again, it is separate from the city. So same kind of thing goes with the rental. If the city says it's okay, then that's great, but you still need to see, is there a restrictive covenant that would restrict that? So hazardous waste and toxic substances. The buyer's advised to consult with appropriate professionals regarding the possible existence of hazardous waste and toxic substances on the property, including but not limited to asbestos, radon gas, lead, lead-based paint, and contamination of the property from the use, storing, or manufacturing of any illegal substances, including methamphetamines. So the buyer needs to make these determinations and do this investigation and find out for themselves whether or not there's issues that they're concerned about and whether they need to have those addressed during their due diligence period. Radon gases is very prevalent actually in Utah. It's across the nation, in fact, but basically comes from granitic decay. So as granite decays underground, it releases a gas that comes up through the ground. And again, I would highly suggest that your buyer reviews this site here, epa.gov/radon, and has the inspector give them a quote of what it would take to do the test if they're concerned, and then of course remediate it if there's a problem. Surveying and staking. Without an accurate survey of the property, buyer cannot be certain as to the boundaries of the property, or that any improvements on the property are not encroaching upon adjoining parcels, or that improvements located on adjoining parcels of the property do not encroach onto the property. I've seen a lot of fences built over property lines or rock walls, that type of thing, and you think maybe your property line is at the bottom of the rock wall or the fence line is it, only to find out later that it's actually in the incorrect place, and somebody may force it to be moved or want to get back the property that's rightfully there. So it is good to have a survey if there's any question as to where that property line lies. And again, it's not your job as a realtor to say this is in fact the property line. You can certainly point at the plat and the measurements there within, but always advise that if they're concerned about what property line is and where things lie within the property, that they get an independent survey done at their expense. So, next page is home warranty plans. The company, the buyer acknowledges that the buyer has been advised by the company that the availability of home warranty plans, which provide limited warranties for certain home appliances and components of the property after closing. I'm a big fan of home warranties. A air conditioner, for instance, costing from $2,000 to $3,000, and if you move in and it breaks and do not have a warranty, that's something you're going to have to buy yourself. But if you do, you can pay a minor deductible and oftentimes have it covered. Again, refer them to the home warranty company as to what's included and under what conditions, because home warranties are not necessarily something that you are an expert in. Flood zone and insurance. If the property is located in a flood zone, as set forth on the HUD specialized or special flood zone area map, the mortgage lender may require the buyer obtain and pay for flood insurance on the property. So it's really important during your due diligence that the lender checks the property to see if it's in a flood zone, because that additional insurance could be something that might make or break your buyer's budget, or even just be a concern to them to where they don't want to buy a home that's in a flood zone. Homes are built all over in flood zones and are totally fine, but some people just may not want to have that risk. So, homeowners insurance. Buyers advise that certain properties, due to location, condition, and or claims history, may be uninsurable or may be insurable at an increased cost. Buyers also advise that buyers' credit, insurance, claims history, and other issues may be factors in determining the availability and cost of homeowners insurance. So not only should they meet with a lender, but they should also start shopping for homeowners insurance options kind of early on in the game to make sure they understand what type of policies are available and what the cost impact of those might be for the type and style and the age of home that they're shopping for. So section 9, title issues, homeowners association. The buyers advise that title insurance companies offer a variety of title policies that provide different levels of coverage. Buyers advise to carefully review with legal counsel and with the title insurer the availability of the title insurance coverage, the contents of any commitment for title insurance on the property, and the contents of all documents affecting the property that are a matter of public record, including but not limited to any restrictive covenants, CCNRs. If the property is part of a condo or HOA, the buyer is advised to consult directly with the HOA regarding all HOA matters that may affect the property, including but not limited to existing and proposed budgets, financial statements, present and proposed assessments, dues, fees, reserve accounts, rules, and minutes. I love to help procure these documents and make these contacts, but I am very specific about directing them directly to the HOA as opposed to me being the middleman. Lots of things can get lost in translation in those communications, and I think it is best to have your buyer communicate directly with an HOA, the HOA president, whoever it is, the treasurer, on these things so that they can get that information straight from them and have a direct conversation about the impacts of entering into the HOA and what type of changes might be in, approved in past minutes or budgets, that type of stuff. And the same with covenants and restrictions. I like to see those come from the title company directly versus just directly from the seller, because or match up the CCNRs that you're provided with what shows on the abstract or the title commitment, because if they had an outdated CCNR or an incomplete record of the CCNRs, what's going to be binding on the property is what's recorded on the property. So make sure you're getting that information from the title company. Physical condition. This is the biggest one for most people, and that's to consult with an appropriate professional regarding all physical aspects of the property, including but not limited to basically everything. So the plumbing, appliances, fittings and systems, heating, air conditioning, electrical wiring, appliances, components, the foundation, the roof, the structure, exterior surface, all that stuff. You want to have them use an independent third-party inspector for the property and find somebody who's reputable. I always like to have at least a few good quality inspectors available to make as references, but certainly let them know they're free to shop for and choose whomever they like. And even if their uncle is a contractor for years, I still find it best to refer them to somebody who is an inspector by trade, because they have a keen eye for knowing what to look for in different years, different areas, and that type of thing. And also have usually really good recommendations for remedies on things. So square footage and acreage. So again, plug this in. Square footage and acreage of the property, if that's of material concern, the buyers are advised to verify square footage or acreage through any independent sources or means, and deemed appropriate by the buyer. In the event the company provides any numerical measurements or statements regarding these items, they're approximation only. So the appraiser really does a measurement and those things, but whatever you provide or what's been taken from the MLS, that cannot be held as final fact. Utility services, the buyer is advising consult with appropriate professionals regarding the location of utility service lines, not limited to sewer, natural gas, electricity, cable TV, etc. Some people have specific requirements for a high-speed cable, and if they move in and there's not enough data connection, they can't use their home office, that type of thing. So they need to be aware of what is available. Water, the buyer is advised to consult with the water service provider for the property and other appropriate professionals regarding the source, quality, and availability of the water for the property. Some people are concerned about fluoride or other things like that. They need to know what type of water they're getting, to where they're getting it from. Are they getting it from a well? Is it a community well or a private well? Those types of things. So make sure your buyer does that investigation, help them find the right sources and locations, but ultimately it's them who should be making that research happen. Geologic conditions, the buyer's advised to consult with appropriate professionals regarding possible geologic conditions, such as soil, terrain stability, existence of wetlands, drainage problems, etc. Mold, EPA.gov has a bunch of great information about mold. During their inspection, you should, if they're concerned about it, have their inspector do a mold test and watch for water damage, water leaks, moist areas of the property, that type of thing. Housing compliance, buyers advised to consult with appropriate professionals regarding neighborhood or property conditions such as school, proximity and adequacy of law enforcement, commercial, industrial, agriculture activities, crime statistics, fire protection, anything like that. So this whole section, again, they need to be privy to what's near them and what's available. Property taxes, depending on present use, the property may be taxed as greenbelt. So an agricultural property may be greenbelt. If they quit farming and or subdivide the property, there may be greenbelt taxes that become assessed later, and they would be responsible to pay those for the rollback taxes. So if it's in greenbelt, just make sure you understand whose responsibility is to pay any of the rollback taxes should it come out of greenbelt. Income tax and legal consequences, they must really consult with a legal professional or tax professional in those. Foreign investment real estate property tax act, so if they're not a current U.S. citizen, they need to disclose that here, and the seller will also disclose that as well. Energy efficiency, EnergyStar.gov has some great resources for ways to improve the property and potentially save the money through energy improvements. So sometimes there's rebates back for upgrading your insulation in the attic, that type of thing. Receipt and acknowledgement of the buyer. So this, again, it's not a binding agreement here so much as a disclosure, but we've advised them to review everything in the due diligence checklist. So make sure they sign a date here and you keep that in your file and present it to your broker with your agency agreement. That essentially is the buyer due diligence checklist. So hope you found it beneficial, and I look forward to sharing the next class with you soon.